Welcome to In Session Taking Back Control. This podcast contains discussions on topics related to mental health, which may include sensitive and potentially triggering information regarding violence, abuse, addictions, and other mental health conditions. The experiences shared by our guests are personal and represent their individual perspectives. They have voluntarily agreed to share their stories with the aim of fostering understanding and awareness. The content of this podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. It is not a substitute for seeking professional help, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a qualified mental health professional for any concerns or questions related to your health and well-being. Listener discretion is advised. If you find any content distressing, we encourage you to pause the episode and seek support from a trusted individual or a mental health professional. Thank you for listening to In Session Taking Back Control, and we hope that the conversations that we share contribute to a deeper understanding of mental health. Okay, welcome to In Session Taking Back Control. Today we've got Seamus Corry. So Seamus, thanks very much for joining me in session. So for those who don't know you, I know you've just become a best-selling author. You can tell us a wee bit about that very soon. But for anybody else who doesn't know you or what you do, just tell me a wee bit about this is my Sala Black moment. What's your name and where do you come from?
Oh, thanks, Declan. Well, listen, good morning, everybody. And Declan, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. And taking back control is such an important subject for me that I'm delighted to be here to share some of my own story to help some of your listeners, obviously, going forward. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Seamus Corry, and I suppose to put it in perspective, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, I'm a trainer, I'm a facilitator, I'm a well-being consultant and mental health practitioner. I'm also a godfather, so you can refer to me as the Don at any time during this podcast that you want, Declan. I officially became a godfather nearly 4 weeks ago now, so
Brilliant.
anytime going forward, if you're ever in discussion with me in the next couple of months, you will be taken into a darkened room with the blind shut and, I will be speaking to you in that sort of voice. Hey, you come into my house. Hey, you come
You're
into...
going to make me an offer I can't refuse.
So, and I am founder and creator of the Potentially You project, which we'll get into, which is a social entrepreneurial profit with purpose based in supporting people and communities to enable them get the help and support that they need, much like yourself, but also boost positive mental health and boost well-being among staff team and wider communities in which I participate as well. As you've already identified, as of yesterday, I am also now an international best-selling co-author on the Rattle the Wake anthology series, Volume 11, which is the mental health issue, which was launched on Wednesday, and together with myself and 12 other collaborating authors, we produced the book, I think, which has a lot of power, a lot of emotions, a lot of hope, a lot of reality, a lot of stories, but an awful lot of direction in terms of where people can go for help and support if they find themselves struggling. And it's written by a group of people who've been there, done that, and worn the t-shirt, especially myself. And I'm also a podcaster. My podcast series, Wellbeing with Seamus, is getting good coverage at the moment on YouTube and Spotify. And should your listeners, ever want to take a relaxing break for an hour and listen to a bit of chat, easy chat, as it were, around well-being and mental health, well, drop into my podcast, follow me, and and link with me on YouTube. That's pretty much a kind of rounded version of where I am at the moment, Declan. But as you'll probably get into, I've not always been where I am now. So let's onward bound and let's take the dive. All right.
We will do. And firstly, congratulations on all the achievements, because, I mean, what a list.
Thanks,
of
man.
of things that you've achieved. Not only, I mean, all the career stuff, absolutely, but the parenthood and the grandparent, but becoming a don is a massive thing,
It's
you know.
huge.
So
It's huge.
and you can see that it's a really important thing for you. So congratulations and all that, and the book as well. You know, we briefly talked about it before you came on and stuff. And phenomenal achievement to work in
Huge.
collaboration with so many people as well. And so I can't wait to get a read at it and get my hands on it so I can dig into it. But with this podcast, Seamus, what we tend to do is, and we've talked about it in the past, you know, off screen, is that sometimes who we are today is dictated by who we were as a child and what we experienced in our childhood and our early adolescence and young adulthood. So before we look at the kind of here and now and all the amazing stuff you're doing right now and all the amazing plans you have for going forward, I would ask you to go back a wee bit, and if you could tell me a wee bit about wee Seamus. You know, who was he? Do you know what was life like for him? Who became the man?
Yeah. We Seamus was born into a lovely community in Southern Ireland, into a family of four brothers and one sister and a mum and a dad, fundamentally devoutly Catholic. And, you know, the whole community in which I lived in was, in essence, a Catholic community. You know, 99.99% of the community in which I lived, of 900 people at that time, was Catholic. There was only about 1.5% who were Church of Ireland, who lived in the village, and they did their own thing. And I lived in and grew up in a very rural community in Southern Ireland. I suppose um, it may sound idyllic, and it was. You know, everybody knew everybody else. You knew the way. You know, everybody's back door was open. You know, we were in and out each other's houses all the time. Everybody knew each other's business, and it was very much that community-based, support-based village where everybody just rode in, really. And you know, farmers helped one another out. You know, if there was big events coming up, we all got together as a community to, you know, to celebrate or to mourn or to rejoice, you know, in wins and sport or community. And it was a lovely community in some sense to grow up in. The difference for me, in terms of my own story, was that at a very young age, very soon after I was born, I was picked and chosen to become a Roman Catholic priest in the family. And traditionally, at that time in the Ireland of the late 1960s, the early 1970s, there was a big push on vocations to the priesthood. There was a big push on sending young men away to train and become priests for the Catholic Church in Ireland, and
Mm-hmm.
it was considered I suppose, in Ireland at that time, if you had a daughter a nun and a son a priest and a cow in the field, as the saying went in our own village, you were considered to be very wealthy in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And the choice was, as it were, I was finger marked, I was finger pointed, I was chosen by my dad to become a priest in the family. Now, we had no history of clerical or religious life in the family up to that. I simply, because of my unique circumstances, my birth, and my dad believed that I was a bit of a miracle. I was cured by God in terms of I was born a little bit premature, and the doctor initially said that I wouldn't survive, and I survived. And then my dad did the deal with God to say that, you know, if this young boy survived, well, I'll give him back to you. You know, he can become your servant, and that's what happened. So I grew up with this sense that there was only one real life for me, and that life was priesthood. My whole life was conditioned around that. The level of control I had or choice I had was dictated by that choice. So everybody in the village knew that I was going to become a priest. I was the savior of my family. I was the savior of my community. I was the savior of my county. I was the savior of my diocese. You know, and unbeknownst to me, I just went, yeah, this is going to be my life. This is who I am. You know, from a very earliest age, I took my first steps in my local church. When other young boys used to be playing cowboys and Indians, I used to practice on how to say mass. You know, it was just it was just the way it was for me, and I accepted it because I thought there was nothing else, absolutely nothing else. And I lived my life very much in blissful innocence of anything else. It was a rural community. I'd never been away from home. You know, we were very much self-sufficient in terms of roles and responsibilities, and we're very much self-sufficient in terms of our village life. So I never really extended outside the village. I suppose the furthest I went was Limerick, which is about 9 miles from where I live. Again, it was a market town, not really that big. And again, fundamentally, we were surrounded by religion. I felt surrounded by religion, and I felt dictated to by bells and whistles and rosaries and religious services, and Christmas and Easter and Lent, and all the other kind of festivals of faith that we celebrated as a Catholic community. And religion ran through the very bloodline of our village and our family, and it was vitally important to us, to worship and to celebrate and be part of a worshiping community there in 6 Mile Bridge.
Wow. So, I mean, like you're describing there, I mean, almost from birth, your life was laid out for you.
Yeah.
In the point of planning to put you into the ministry.
Yeah.
Well, probably in your early 20s, I imagine. But I mean, it must have been quite difficult. I know you're saying that you kind of were blissfully unaware, but I can imagine there must have been a point, certainly as you came into your teenage years, that and you had your own needs as a young man, and your hormones were changing, and maybe being attracted to people and
Yeah.
young girls in school or class or whatever. How did that navigate with not just yourself but the people around you? Because it sounds like you were on this pedestal in the village that you were going to be a priest. So, but you weren't a priest yet. You were a boy. So how you're expected to perform almost within that role and have that level of capacity. All the while trying to be a young boy going
Yeah.
into a young man.
At the time, as I said, Declan, I was blissfully aware, but I would recognise an awful lot of what went on in my own life in the early days as a form of coercive control. I was coercively controlled quite strongly into the role, to the extent that you're absolutely right. Look, I left, I left primary school. I went to a mixed secondary school, and and it was mixed, right? Boys and girls, and and you're absolutely right. I came into my teenage years, and the hormones were raging a bit, and I suppose the period of exploration where you try to navigate relationships and friendships, and maybe connect more closer with girls of my own age, and I remember in particular, I mean, to put it in perspective for you, I did have a relationship. I did start a brief relationship with a girl when I was in secondary school, and everything was great. We used to hold hands in the morning and sit beside each other in class, and share the odd peck on the cheek, and it was really, really innocent, and my first kind of baby love, or baby crush, or whatever you want to see it. And then about 6 or 7 months into the relationship, it suddenly stopped. I went to school one day and she completely ghosted me. Absolutely ghosted me.
Right.
Just out of the blue, ghosted me. Wanted to sit at the other side of class and wouldn't no longer hold my hand, and really wouldn't even talk to me for years after. And I felt really hurt by that. I felt really, really hurt by that. I felt really, really almost guilty that maybe I said something or did something out of turn. I mean, there was no way of crossing the T's and dotting the I's. There was no way of finding out what it was, because the communication stopped. And it wasn't until years later I met with her again when we were both much older and in different positions. And I asked her candidly, I said, what happened during that? Do you remember that when we used to go out and, we were at school together, and we had the beginnings of a great old friendship and relationship, and what happened? So she basically turned around and she said, well, your dad came to see my mum, and your dad told my mum in no uncertain terms was I to continue to see you because I was going to be a Roman Catholic priest. So our relationship as such had to stop.
Oh.
Stop. So when I heard that, I was devastated, absolutely devastated. That it actually went to that level, that my freedom to choose actually was completely denied to me, that I was conditioned into this role, I was directed into this role, I was focused into this role, and else shall dissuade me from it. And I know we've spoken off air about your own situation, Declan, how you had thought about it as well. And
Yeah,
but thankfully, you made the right choice for you. I didn't have that choice. I didn't have that choice. That choice was taken away from me. My choice was made for me. My life was set out and set forth, and my role, as I saw it, was to fulfill the
yeah.
obligations of others.
I mean, it sounds. I mean, I can hear the hurt now, actually, in you. You know, that frustration
Mm.
still. And you're right. It was something that I had considered as well. You know, when I was younger, I thought, and it was. I don't think it was as it wasn't coercively controlled the way you're describing it, but I think there was certainly that you would you would be very well thought of, in the family if you became a priest or if, and I mean, they used to joke about it, oh, our Declan's going to become a priest. And, and as I got older, I went to an all boys high school then. So I was in a mixed primary, went to an all boys secondary school in Derry, which was fine. And we just ticked along. So it was all basically a school full of fights and rumbles and, all that kind of stuff. Who's the alpha? But the difficult thing was there was two all girls schools across the road. So for me, that tipped it, because walking home from school at 20 past 3 every day, and you're kind of nervously bumping into girls and chatting to them, and so that I think, and I went to, I was an altar boy and done all that stuff, and really really enjoyed it. It was fine, but I think I quickly in my early teenage years I realised, actually, I'm maybe not the guy for the cloth. So decided to go the other route. But I think we all serve in our own ways. I think there's
100%.
the purpose. It doesn't have to be ministry. I would argue the fact that what I'm doing now is a service in some ways,
Absolutely.
to care for people, and it's just not through the ministry. So I you're right. But I suppose, like, listening to your point though, what was your relationship like with your dad specifically? Because you mentioned your dad being that authoritarian. At first, he made an agreement with God, and then he's kind of decided, no, you can't see my boy because he's going to be a priest, and you, like, nobody come near him. He's ring fenced. What was your relationship like with your dad growing up then? Once you got to know these things.
I suppose my relationship with my dad, I respected my dad. My dad was the patriarch in the family, and everybody respected my dad. He was respected in the community. He was respected in the family. His decision went. And he was very much in control of the house and the people within that household. But he laid all his bricks onto me, really. He laid all of his maybe lost dreams and lost ambitions onto me. And I have no doubt, and I think he mentioned it a few times, but that at one stage he thought himself he would go off and become a priest. But he met my mum, and as they say, that was put to bed very, very quickly, similar to yourself. And I think I loved my dad, and my dad loved me. But what I didn't realize at the time, that love was conditional, based on fulfilling a certain level of requirements and a certain level of obligations, and there was a certain understanding, a conditional understanding in that love. I loved my dad unconditionally, but my dad only loved me insofar as I fulfilled his dreams and his ambitions of becoming a priest in the family.
Yeah. It sounds like your dad was maybe living vicariously through you,
Yeah,
because he didn't get to kind of get
yeah,
what he thought his life would be.
yeah. There was a lot of that going on as well, and the dynamic in our own relationship is he lived a lot of his life through me, and I was the golden child, really, much to the annoyance and jealousy of my own siblings growing up, that I was getting a lot of attention, and redirection of finances and all that kind of stuff, particularly when it came to going off to seminary, were all put my way, and and my siblings and my brothers and sisters had to find their own way, really. So they had it much harder, ironically, than me in a way, but much easier in the long run.
At what point did you realise that it was coercive control, or did you not really realise it till you went on to seminary? I'm assuming you went through with it.
I did. I mean, I left secondary school just turning 16. I turned 16 in August, and I went off to seminary on the 4th of September 1987.
16?
16, yeah. 16, when, when other of my colleagues my friends were having their first drink and getting hammered on the bottle of beer around the corner and their first pint and stuff, I was heading up the road to St. Patrick's College in Maynooth with my mum and dad on the evening of the 4th of September 1987 to start my seminary life. And very much excited by it, very much, this is it, this is the role. Car was packed. It was like I was going off to the boarding school, as it were, for the first time. But as you can appreciate, I was leaving home for the first time because I hadn't left home up to that point. I was going to a completely new, different part of the country. I was going to a big national seminary, a national university. I wasn't alone. There was 121 other young guys with me who walked through those doors that particular evening. And I remember, the evening, and we had a bit of light tea and cake, and it was lovely. And there was the opening kind of welcome from the president, and at some point, he invited parents to leave. Cheerio, you've dropped your way enough. See you later, and we'll be in touch, basically. And I remember distinctly, Declan, if you've ever been to Maynooth, there's a big old set of medieval doors that, if you go up the central pathway, when you come to the building itself, there's a big set of medieval doors. I think they were built in the 1700s and stuff, with the wee little small door that you walk through, and takes you into a cloister, and it's all very, very, very grand. And I remember seeing my mum and dad leave and go through the door, and I remember the bang of the door, like the door was shut, locked, snapped. That was it. And from that moment, I was on my own. From that moment, I had to either swim or drown. But what I experienced, from that evening on, was nothing short of very traumatic. Initially, all of us, the first 121, were taken, and we all had our our property from home and our suitcases and everything. Everything was rifled through. All our personal belongings were searched, and we were, all home comforts were taken away. So if you had an alarm clock, if you had something nice, or we were all stripped down, basically. In the same way, you would bring newly found cadets into the Marines, really, and they were stripped down to their bare joxers, and not to the same extent, but all our property was taken away. We were allocated our room at the top of the main building, which was nothing short of medieval. It had one sink. It had one old bed with a 1.5-inch mattress on it. There was nothing like that you would call comfort. It was absolutely freezing cold. There was a little cracked mirror up on the wall, and this was it. This was it. And I turned around to myself, and I pardon the expression, but just said, "What the fuck have I come to?"
Yeah.
Where's the warm welcome? Where's the tea? Where's the tea and cake? And so it continued for the first 2 years. I would say Peter Mullen, the great Scottish director and writer and actor, when he created the Magdalene Sisters in the early 1990s and put that film to, brought that film to public limelight and to the horrific nature of the Catholic Church's abuse of single women and, who were gave birth to children, and the Magdalene laundries and all that, and a horrific stain on Catholicism in Ireland and the abuses it suffered. He referred to the Catholic Church as the Catholic Taliban, in producing that, and that produced a degree of shock and rebuke. But he stuck to his guns, and I would firmly, if he's listening to this and if he tunes into your podcast, I would agree with him that what the Catholic Church was in the early 1990s was a Talibanistic corporate institution that cared little about people's safety and people's mental health and people's well-being, but all was about the bottom line. All was about putting, numbers up there. All was about creating these drones, these priestly drones, to go out there and minister to parishes in Ireland who really needed them. And what I experienced was nothing short of an abusive Talibanistic regime that cared little about my mental health, my well-being, my safety, and really sought to break me down in order to, in some way, weirdly, make me stronger as a priest. And I suppose, having experienced that regularly for over a 2-year period during my philosophy years, my time in philosophy, which was the first 2 years of formation, was all about telling you that God didn't exist, Declan.
Really?
Yeah, and you had to prove the contrary. So the philosophical arguments were out there, whether it was epistemology, whether it was logic, whether it was philosophy of religion. All the great philosophers out there really denied the existence of God. Now, coming from a faith background, how do you square the circle on that? How do you square the circle when you're going into lectures every single day and say, no, listen, God doesn't exist. Prove it to the contrary. What evidence do you have to say that God exists? But what is faith? And what do you believe in? Do you believe in anything? Is it just made up? Is it just fallacy? So we were all, and me personally, challenged to the core in terms of my own faith and beliefs. Now, coupled with that, if that wasn't bad enough, with the rigor of discipline and with the rigor of early morning prayers and with the rigor of the prayer of the church, but together, and I don't know if you know the combination of what Maynooth is, but it's a combination of a seminary and a national university, right? All on one campus. So for the first month, it was just us, 121. Well, slightly less by the end of the month finished, quite a lot of young people left. And they started leaving pretty much 24 hours after, a lot of young guys went the following morning and said, fuck this, I didn't get a night's sleep, this is not what I come to, and left. But we were told quite clearly, if you do leave, what are you going to go back to?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be rejected by your family, you're going to be rejected by your friends, but if you still want to go, there's the gate. There's the gate. So it's almost that duality of abuse, right? We'll abuse you, but if you leave, you're going to leave with fucking nothing. You're going to leave with less than nothing. So what's your choice? What's your choice?
Jesus.
Do you stay or do you go? So you were constantly reeling with that in your head. Because as you were coming down to breakfast in the morning, another 2 people have left and another guy had left over here. And their numbers began to dwindle significantly over the preceding months. In October of 1987, the National University opened. Just came back, students come back. So you had this dichotomy, right? If that wasn't bad enough, but you had this dichotomy of, look, you're in the world, but not of it. You're in university life, but you're separated and you're apart because you're a seminary, right? Now, put that in front of a 16-year-old, never been away from home, experiencing libertarian social university life for the first time. What in instinct, naturally would human beings want to do? They'd want to explore, right?
Absolutely.
They'd want to get involved. They want to get involved in university groups and the life of the university because it was on our doorstep. How could you not? not get involved. You know, I mean, that's in itself a form of torture, right?
Absolutely. Well, we're social animals. We're built to do that. It's not something that it's instinctive.
It is. So you had one side, almost like a bipolar split personality type disorder, where you said, no, I must be this, you know, stand up, go lucky seminarian, you know, fulfilling my life destiny. On the other side of us, you know what, by the way, this looks really good. I think I'll go to that gig tonight. You know, and I think I'll play a bit of music, and I think I'll lift a drink, and, you know, all that stuff. But I'm not supposed to do that, because I'm supposed to be that seminarian who has a clean life and abides by the law of the church. But how can I do that when this is on my doorstep, and when you've got 4,500 students, and there was 1 to 10 women in that? You know, 1 to 10, 1 to 10, Declan, 1 to 10. I just want to put that number in front of you, 1 to 10, and you've never been away from home before.
At 16,
At 16.
that's a cocktail for disaster.
So after 2 years of this crazy head, you know, separation thing that was going on in my head, I said, you know what, I've had enough. I'm just fucking exhausted. I was exhausted. I was tired. I had enough. I had enough of the church. I had enough of this craziness going on. And I turned to my mum and dad and said, right, that's me. I'm out. I'm finished. Don't want to go back. And you know, brought me home and really didn't speak to me for about 6 months. And our relationship got very frosty and very cool, and, you know, it was a big disappointment to my dad. And I found that really, really hard to bear. I found that, you know, the silence awful. I found the silence awful. I found the fact that my stuff that I brought home from college and university remained in the garage in my home, because my dad refused to bring it in the house, because I wasn't welcome. So after 6 months of this torture, I said to myself, do you know what? I'll go back, but I'll go back to the hardest, toughest seminary that there is, which was St. Patrick's College in Thurles. I don't know if you know it, but it's the Marine Corps. It was the Marine Corps of Catholicism and the Marine Corps of seminary life. And my reasoning for that was, I was unsure that I had a vocation, but these guys would sort it out fairly quick. They would see through the shite, and they would see quite quickly if I had one or if I didn't have one. And if I didn't have one, I'd be out my ear quite quickly. And I was happy to be out my ear, but I wouldn't be making that decision. That would be the decision of the church.
Okay, so was that a conscious or unconscious decision then to do that?
That was a very conscious decision.
Right. Was there a hope there that
there was a hope that they would see through my shite and see through the reality?
And then your dad would accept you back because the church made that decision.
Well, the church made that decision. There was nothing wrong with me. Church made that decision. I wasn't fit for purpose, and that would be okay. And I would go on and live the rest of my life. So I went back in September 1990 after taking a kind of a sabbatical year off, and went in, and it was all black and head shaved, and fuck it, this was real. And after 2 years in Maynooth, this place was like a holiday camp, right? Because it was a little bit nicer, but what the guys had experienced in Thurles, they didn't experience in Maynooth. They didn't experience that craziness. So it was so I set myself to the task, and I thought, if I make it to Christmas, I'll be lucky. And I made it to Christmas, and I made it to Easter, and then I made summer my first year, and I thought to myself, Declan, maybe I've been wrong all along.
Right.
Maybe I do have a vocation. Maybe I do have this calling from God. Maybe I am supposed to be a priest. So I kind of began to believe the message. So maybe it's me. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is me. Maybe I was wrong and everybody else was right. So I went on, and 1 year followed another, and 1 year followed another, and I was in the middle of my third year. And one Saturday night, a group of us had been sitting around watching the television, and we'd been laughing and joking. I think it was Eurovision on. Okay, I know it's hard to take. Once upon a time, I did watch the Eurovision, Declan. I know, I'm sorry, but I had to share that
You're
with him.
describing like a scene from Father Ted, for Christ's sake, Seamus.
Yeah, it was a kind of like a Father Ted evening, and we were laughing and joking and eating a few crisps and, drinking a bit of juice and watching the TV, and we had a good laugh at the Eurovision. Then we went off, all of us went off to our respective rooms, and sometime between 11:45 on Saturday night and 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, one of my good friends, Michael Deacon, took his own life in the college.
In the college?
Yeah. He hung himself in the community hall, right in front of the very large crucifix, and he had planned it to an absolute T. So when he was found the following morning, he was hanging perfectly vertically opposite the crucifix. He had just planned it and executed it so well. As you can appreciate, after 176 years of history in that particular seminary, with no deaths on their watch, to have a suicide right in the middle of that seminary, right in the heart of Catholic Ireland, was a huge blow to the church. Huge blow. And it affected all of us deeply. It affected, still kind of affects me. Seeing him and seeing the aftermath and seeing how the church imploded in and itself, and tried to steer the blame away from them to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a difficult time, both the immediate aftermath, the follow up, to have grown men come into your room and break down in front of you and ask you what they should do, and you telling them to provide counsellors and close the college down and get support in for the guys, and then less than a week, 2 weeks later, have Michael's best friend try to take his own life as well, and put him on suicide watch for 24 hours, and you're part of that team, and get the help and support that they needed. And it was just a absolutely terrible time. And at that point, I came home that summer, and all I wanted to do was get out of there really as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
On the 11th of June 1994, I was ordained. I was given my freedom, weirdly, from that college environment, and I was ordained in front of 2,500 people, 314 priests, 14 or 15 bishops, and an archbishop who laid his hands on me and ordained me a priest. And I came out of there on the 12th of June, celebrated my first mass at home back in my own village, to a packed church. Even my ancestors, I think, rose themselves from the dead just to make themselves present at my first mass. I think I saw them in a couple of the back rows, and but all the while, I had trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma.
Yeah.
Not dealt with that. And yourself as a counsellor, vicarious trauma, if it's not dealt with, can destroy you literally from the inside out.
Yeah.
It can destroy you. And the first 15 months of my ministry was the hardest, loneliest time I've ever experienced anywhere, because I came into a job, I came into a role, I came into a priesthood that didn't provide supervision or support after trauma, didn't provide supervision or support after sudden death, didn't provide support or supervision after witnessing a death, sometimes horrific death. Equally, sharing people's lives in good times and bad. While all this stuff was just wrangling around in my brain. It was difficult, and I just wanted somebody to care for me. I just wanted somebody to, give me a hug, really. I was struggling with my own emotions. I was struggling with me. I was struggling with who I was. I was struggling with my own identity. I was struggling with everything. I began to question everything that I thought I was, and I didn't. I struggled with everything, one thing led to another, and when you're that vulnerable, and when you're that weak, and when you're that down, the first bit of love you'll come across, you'll wrap your arms around it. And I kind of had a bit of a relationship with a parishioner. It started out fairly light, but ended up fairly intensely sexual, which involved pregnancy, which involved a termination, which I supported. And after that, I just wanted to die after that, Declan. I just wanted to die after that because I just felt shit. I just felt absolutely worthless. Nobody knew, and eventually it all came out. I got in my car one day. I had decided I was just going to drive off the face of the planet. I had had enough of that. I had had enough of pain, trauma, everything. Just wanted it all to end. Just wanted it all to stop. And I can honestly say, Declan, that when I got in that car that day, I can't remember the drive that I took. I can't remember where I went. I can't remember the roads that I took. We call it blackout, call it something else. But I don't remember the journey. All I remember is I had a full tank of petrol when I started out, and I had an empty tank by the time I finished.
Right.
And I had a small car, so I reckon I did about maybe 400, 500, 600 miles with it. And I eventually ended up, believe it or not, outside a friend's house, where he took me in for the night, gave me bed and board, and and again I was gone AWOL, so people were concerned, and got help and support initially from my family and then from a bishop. My bishop took me in, obviously needed to carry out an investigation into everything that happened. So he took me off to a retreat centre for 6 weeks to allow that investigation to take place. I was literally interrogated by two of the top psychiatrists and psychologists that the Catholic Church had to offer at that time. And their objective was to find out why the program didn't work. What was wrong with the program? Why did this guy go so, off the reservation?
Yeah.
So they prodded and probed, and honestly, by the end of it, it was like Guantanamo Bay with the music blaring and the talk going on a day-to-day basis. I was ready to plead guilty to anything just to make it stop. While all the while, I wasn't dealing with the trauma. I was just getting trauma upon trauma upon trauma upon trauma. And trauma is a bastard, right? You know that yourself. Trauma has a magnetic force that if you've ever experienced any form of trauma in your life and you experience another trauma, all the other traumas come and collectively gather around that one trauma, so it becomes a huge trauma, right? Until it gets to the point where it becomes completely debilitating. And that was me.
And and you're right. You're listening to you. You're describing, a series of traumatic events, one after the other, and almost a domino effect as well. All the while, you were expected to perform your ministry for 15 months, and be a good priest and do everything that was expected of you since you were born. Thinking about just taking you back to the loss of your friend in the seminary. Was there any support at all? Or was it? You mentioned there was no supervision. There was no, or was it tried to be hushed? How were you guys supported within the seminary?
Yeah, I mean, there was a big official investigation. There was a big inquest. There was a big post-mortem. There was a big funeral. Michael got full religious honours in terms of his burial, and you quite rightly so, because I firmly believe that the Catholic Church had blood on their hands in terms of what happened to Michael. They had a duty of care. They had the duty of responsibility to look after Michael, and they failed in that duty. They failed in that obligation, and I believe that to my dying day. Which led to Michael's death, because it turned out that Michael had an undiagnosed mental health condition that if it became known would preclude him from priestly ministry because of his mental health condition at that time. It was one of the exceptions. And Michael couldn't square the circle. What was he to do? Was he to remain and struggle on, or reveal it and then go home to the shame and rejection of his family? So he just couldn't square the circle, and there was no support for that. There was no support for that. Yeah.
And it's sad because you ultimately went on then to feel the same.
Yeah.
You went on then, it sounds like, you haven't used the word, but you went on then to consider suicide yourself. You
Yeah.
said, I wanted to drive my car off the end of the world.
Yeah.
So you were then contemplating taking your life as well.
Yeah. I didn't want to kill myself. I just wanted an end to the pain, and an end to the pain for me meant driving off the face of the planet. And I think this is, I can't speak to every suicidal victim, and I can't speak to anyone who takes their own life. But I would hesitate and guess that at some stage that individual experiences overwhelming pain over a sustained period of time. That they want, and sadly, over 7% of the UK population last year took their own lives, and that figure is rising year on year. There are so many people, and you'll know from your own counselling experience, Declan, there are so many people walking around with historic vicarious trauma, and it just takes a series of unfortunate events to bring that to the suffrage, which then puts some people in a position where they feel they've got no choice.
Yeah, and it can sometimes be that straw that breaks the camel's back. It doesn't have to be, it can be that build up the long term. We talk about adverse childhood experiences and the things that happen then in adulthood as a result of those, all traumatic in your childhood. And these children, young people, young adults, going into adulthood are seen as survivors, but they're just managing. They just manage to muddle through the chaos, but it's still there. There's a quote about trauma and vicarious trauma that that I often share, is that the expectation that we can experience trauma and not be harmed by it is like expecting that we can walk through water and not get wet. It has to affect us. It can't not affect us, and ultimately those around us as well, potentially. But it's how that's managed and supported and cared for. And like you said, would, if you got that hug at the very early stage, would that have changed the dynamics for things going forward?
It could have. It could have. But with all the evidence of my wrongdoing in front of the bishop and in front of me, I felt like complete and utter failure. My life as a priest was over. My life in ministry was over, and I did the decent thing and did everybody a favour and resigned from the priesthood on the 18th of March 1996. And I think I remember the date and time quite well. I handed in my letter at 6:15 in the evening into the bishop's house, and it was accepted pretty much, right away. The bishop was very supportive, and I have to compliment the bishop where the bishop at the time was incredibly supportive and incredibly caring, and so he saw the reality for what it was, but also saw the fallout from my decision, and because in a very short space of time I was rejected by my own family, I was rejected by my community. I had no other choice but to leave Ireland and leave the Republic because I could no longer live there or be welcome there. The bishop managed to get me a kind of role within a monastery, would you believe, in Scotland as a volunteer gardener.
Okay.
Where I spent my first 3 months of sojourn in a country I didn't know, with people I didn't know, surrounded by all this pain and hurt and anger, again, which wasn't in any way dealt with or supported. Once or twice while I was there, I thought about, again, very strongly taking my own life. But again, I don't know if it was something within me or something external to me, but something told me just to hang on. In one occasion, I remember sitting on top of a hill one evening, and I thought, "This is the evening I'm gonna, I'm gonna do it." And I saw the sun going down, the sunset, and I thought to myself, "If I take my life tonight, I'm not going to see another sunrise."
Yeah.
and I'm not going to see another sunset. That's going to be it. And I just had that moment of clarity to think, maybe I should just hang on. Something maybe internally told me maybe something will get better. Maybe I can go just one more day. Maybe I can go just one more day. Very soon after that, I met somebody who came to the retreat center in the monastery for a wee weekend. We got talking. I wanted to prove to everybody I could make it as a human being in the real world. So I went and she invited me over the weekend, which ended up 7 years and 3 kids. I still didn't know myself, Declan. I still didn't know who I was. I still didn't know who I was. And I had all this shit piling around my head. And I was angry and I was traumatized and I was, affected. She did the best she could. And we had 3 kids together. And our relationship fell apart after 7 years. And our kids went with their mum. And I think quite rightly so at the time. But I was in so much pain. I was in so much distress that, in my book, Rattled Awake, Volume 11, I speak to that moment in my life where, and this will speak, I suppose, 54 minutes into to this podcast episode where I finally took back control. Where I finally sat myself down and I went, what the fuck is going on with me? Why is it every time that I touch something, it turns to shit or it goes to shit? What's going on with me? Who am I? What am I about? And I started on a journey of painful rediscovery and therapy that has taken me on a journey and a mental health journey and a mental health recovery journey and a well-being journey that 26 years in, and I'm still on that journey. I'm still finding out things about myself. But it's also enabled me, for example, to do things like this today and speak openly about my own experience so that if somebody's listening to this today, if somebody's, at that point in their life when they can see no other option, there is another option. All you got to do is reach out because that person will be there. And if that's me, if that's you, Declan, if that's one of your team, if that's the Samaritans, if that's, whoever it might be, reach out and speak to somebody. You don't have to carry this on your own. And that's when, fundamentally, I took back control. And it's been a series for me, and it's been a journey of taking back control since that time.
Wow. I mean, firstly, thank you for sharing your story, your journey, and I know there's so much more to your story because we've kind of sliced 26 years off the end there. But I appreciate you sharing because we did go back to the past and talked about, and we initially talked about what happens in the past dictates who you become in the future. Do you believe that? Do you believe that who you are now has been cemented by what happened in early childhood?
Absolutely, 100%. Because having the difficult life that I had, experiencing the experience that I have, going through the process of trauma, and experiencing real trauma in a whole wide range of different ways, whether it was bullying, harassment, hazing, whether it was, identifying myself now as a survivor of domestic abuse, child sexual abuse, insofar as nobody ever touched me sexually, but I want to be clear with your listeners, insofar as that there was a degree of coercive control of myself, which it disabled me from going through my normal sexual development. That in itself becomes a form of sexual abuse.
Yes.
And I had to identify that, and that was hard. But my history, my life experience doesn't dictate now who I am, but I find that having had those experiences, I can bring so much more to the table in helping and supporting others who might find themselves in difficulty in terms of their own mental health and well-being. Because what I've done and what I've continued to do is not only walk the walk, but talk the talk. Because when you look at me now, you see somebody who's, as I said at the start, successful, happy, very much in love, married to a wonderful woman. I've got wonderful grandchildren. I'm in a role that I absolutely love. I get to work with people on a day-to-day basis. I absolutely admire. I get to work with people such as my co-collaborators on Rattled Awake, Volume 11, the Mental Health Edition, who are just absolutely amazing, who they themselves have amazing stories to tell. You know, I get to deliver my own podcast episode, speaking to people on a day-to-day basis that have so much to give, to offer. And I feel very lucky and very blessed, but I'm able to feel that. I'm able to really feel that. I'm able to be really grateful for that on the back of what I've experienced in my life, because there have been 2 or 3 times in my life, quite seriously, that I didn't think I was going to make it to the next again day.
Well, let me say I'm glad you are here today, after those 2 or 3 considerations, because the impact that you've had, not only on myself in the short time that I've known you, but on the people that you work with and the people you share your experiences with through your training, through your books, through your podcast. You truly are fulfilling a vocation, and maybe it wasn't the vocation that was laid out, but there is that part that you are continuing to play. So I'm so happy to have met you, so happy to have had the opportunity to talk to you on the podcast. It feels like there could be a volume 2 to this, because there's another 26 years we need to work on, and all the amazing stuff you've done.
Absolutely is. I think there's absolutely a power too, yeah. Be it on a podcast or over a pint somewhere, because I think the kind of current tallies you owe me 2, is that?
It sounds like I think I owe you 2 pints of stout. That's the current tally. So, but and we debated where you would even get a decent one. So
we have. Certainly, I work, live and work in Scotland now, and like yourself, the good stuff isn't available to the same extent as it is on our native Irish green sod. So, you know, we continue to search, Declan.
Listen, that's a vocation in itself, Seamus.
100%.
See, trying to just find a decent pint of the black stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I will have to split the G, mate. We'll have to split the G.
Oh, definitely. It's on. I definitely owe you. So we'll do our best to split the G. But listen, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate you coming on the podcast and being in session with me and talking about taking back control and leading it in so seamlessly at the end. You're a true professional. So
thank you, my friend.
And thank you very much.
Thank you, Declan. Thank you for having me. And as I say, if your listeners need to reach out, you know, there is help and support available. You know, Samaritans are there 24 hours, 365 days a year, by phone, text, and email now even. So please, if you're struggling, reach out and contact somebody today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Seamus.
You're welcome, Declan.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of In Session Taking Back Control. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review and share it with anyone who might benefit from our discussions. For more resources and support, please visit us at Better You, and don't forget to tune in for another inspiring conversation. Until next time, take care and take back control.